Wait, am I muted? No, I'm not muted.
There you
Haha.
go. Now you're coming through loud and clear. There was like a little bit of audio distortion, but you're coming in good.
Silly me. Okay. Welcome in, everybody. I know it's been a minute, but we're back at it with Writer's Block. Schedule is finally chilling out, and I have more time to actually do these kinds of things. So, besides Writer's Block, this isn't the only show I would like to do. I'd like to do more streams and stuff like that, so stay tuned for that. But we're here for Writer's Block, so let's not waste any time.
Oh yeah. I'm excited to be back, homie.
Me too.
All right. So, let's see. Well, Red, who wants to kick off this time? Are we going to make it me or are we going to make it you?
All you.
All right, then. Let's see. If that's the case, let's take a look and see. My first word of the day is going to be the word precise.
Oh. Precise.
Precise.
All right, what's your feeling behind that word?
Honestly, I like the just the nature of it. There's something very satisfying about the word precise and what it implies, which is something so reliable that you can, set yourself to it. Basically, I like just the term, the implication, both as a temperance, like as a quality, and also as just like whether that can be an implement or a person. A precise person is persnickety. They're doing their tasks with intention, and an organization can be the same way. So I'm kind of like using it as an adjective today, like as a proper adjective for whatever we're going to do.
Right on. I also have an adjective for my first word.
Awesome.
And I'm probably going to spell this wrong on first attempt, but we shall see.
Mm-hmm.
If it'll even let me type. Indefatigable.
Ooh, that's a classic. Haven't heard that one in a while.
I think I spelled that. No, I spelled it wrong.
Indefatigue. Yep.
No. Just get rid of the U. Okay.
Yep.
Indefatigable. Just to describe something that doesn't tire. I'll give you the Merriam-Webster definition. Persisting tirelessly of a person or their efforts. Since we're talking about your first word was literally just describing a faction, I like the idea that precision and precise and indefatigable kind of go hand in hand, in the sense that with a certain level of precision comes a tirelessness. And I think, yeah, I just really like the word a lot, to be fair, and wanted to apply it towards whatever we do today.
It's a good word, and it does dovetail very nicely with what I just put down. So like that's good combo. Good combo. I like it. Okay. So my next word is going to be the word hollow. 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 So there's this vibe that I've been getting from a lot of what we've been doing in regards to writer's block, and specifically in regards to like this particular like project hereafter. And it keeps coming back, the idea of like people and things needing to be filled, being like chalices or cups that experience memory can literally be poured in and out of them. And so I figure I'll just go and leap the shark, and we're going to use hollow. Just actually define the term.
I really like hollow a lot. I just watched a mini documentary about something that reminds me of hollow. The Sokushinbutsu monks, if you're familiar.
I'm familiar with that.
So the idea of them they go through this long and arduous process of basically emaciating themselves and mummifying themselves whilst they're still alive.
Ooh.
So they'll eat absolutely nothing but like seeds. There's a term for the practice, because it's Japanese. They have a word for everything. They're just like Germans. Germans have just words for fucking everything.
Hmm.
It's eating of the tree. They literally just eat things off of trees, like pine needles and nuts and seeds and even tree bark. And the whole purpose of it is to reduce all body fat that they have, so that they may be, and I shit you not, put into a box by their fellow monks, lowered into the ground, and basically buried alive. They're given a bell that they can ring to let the other monks know that they're still alive, and
Hmm.
they're essentially left there for 1,000 days. And then after 1,000 days, they pull them up and see if they're dead and mummified properly. And if they're not mummified properly, well, they try again, or they dispose of the remains in a more traditional way. But um, yeah,
That's
all,
insane. Yeah, I was actually just reading up on this, and it's like
yeah,
it's not that they just bury them; they bury them, and while they're buried, they meditate.
yes.
That is the most single, like, talk about devotion, right, to a cause. That,
They made it
like,
an illegal
that's dogged.
practice.
Yeah.
Just because it's just they don't, the monks that practice this, the Soka Shinbutsu, they don't see it as suicide. They see it as the ultimate form of meditation, and that it's the true way to seek immortality. Um, that's to say they don't practice this anymore because it's considered
Yeah.
obviously illegal, and it's been illegal in Japan since the early 1900s or the late 1800s, if I remember correctly. Um, and unfortunately, there was a monk that did it illegally, and his corpse was not allowed to be displayed because it was an illegal practice. But there still are some living mummies, as it were, that are displayed throughout Japan, um,
Hmm.
which is absolutely bizarre. But yeah, no, that you said hollow, and that reminded me of that.
Yeah, no, that absolutely. Like, it's that I've seen similar depictions of that in like various fantasy and media. Now I know where it comes from. That
Mm.
figures. Awesome. That's good to know. And I do agree. It's a very intriguing practice. So, like, what about you? What's your next word? What do you got?
Uh, this was not intentional, but my next word is sedulous, showing dedication or diligence.
That is, oh man, sedulous. I like that word. I've actually never heard that word before in my life. This is the first time I've ever heard it.
Sometimes I go on random word generator websites, and there was a vocabulary tester one, and I was like, I have no idea what this word means. And I looked into it. I liked it a lot, and the I keep thinking about the monks, obviously, because we just had that conversation. But the most recent depiction of Soku Shinbutsu were the monks or sages in the latest Legends of Zelda games, Breath of the Wild,
Hmm.
where there's monks that sort of trap themselves in boxes. They're dead, but not. Um,
Yeah, I've seen them. The weird lich monk things that are all over the place. Isn't spoilers for the latest Zelda game 2.5 years later? Isn't Ganondorf one of them as well, technically?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I haven't finished Breath of the Wild, but um,
Okay.
eh,
I
one
don't
of
think
the
he's canonically one of them, but like the imagery is very similar when you like
yeah,
discover it.
he's not like Twilight Princess Ganondorf. He's genuinely
Yeah.
just kind of like a monster. The whole reason they would do this process isn't just because of like eternal enlightenment and eternal meditation. They also believe that it's a form of ascending to the heavens without dying, and also being able to protect humanity on Earth. And
Right.
they live
Interesting.
for a million years or something like that in the heavens.
Okay, okay. I might like if I actually had if there was like a verifiable way to be like, oh yeah, this is a thing. I might do that. I'd be like, yeah, no, sure, why not? I'll give up potato chips to live eternally as a guardian spirit. That sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, that sounds pretty metal, actually. And like I said, the practice is antiquated, and it's but no, I'm just so you know what? Since we keep talking about them, we should make some sort of faction inspired by them because not to do the whole. I will say one of my least favorite things in fantasy and in writing is in general is just taking the like bits and pieces of a culture that you like, dare I say katanas and kimonos, and making that an entire thing. I want to approach these. Yeah, I mean, it's a respect to the culture, even if it's an antiquated practice and nobody really like. The Japanese are still fascinated by it. They still like flock to whenever these mummies go on display and they take pictures and stuff like that. But to pay homage to a culture that has been sort of lost to time, a practice that's been lost to time, I absolutely love just the idea of being like katanas are cool, you know. So we're gonna put katanas in the setting. I want to approach it from an L5R sort of standpoint where there's a genuine respect and it isn't just honor, you know. And
avoiding cultural appropriation is definitely a big deal as a creative because like you can be inspired by a culture and not know enough about it to effectively like, you know, represent it, or to not have enough input from that culture. Absolutely. But also on top of that, like there's many different cultures that have made their own mummies. It just, from what I can tell, it seems like the Japanese are one of the cultures I've ever seen that did that while they were alive. Yeah. But even then, we've had like tales about that in other cultures as well, in other places where like the honor dead rise, or like people who are like living dead.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I was gonna say Lazarus, like Jesus
Christ. We just
had
Easter,
Lazarus. Like even the Egyptians had like several beliefs that, like, you know, there are those who literally like have withered away and returned, or like those who have been, you know, I mean, literally one of their most like central gods was like vivisection into a bunch of different pieces and then came back. So like the idea of dancing on the edge of death to achieve something greater than that, I think that's an idea we could definitely play around with for sure. It might, like, again, it's one of those, that's the difference between cultural appropriation and actually just being inspired by something. We can make our own take on that, and it doesn't have to be in kimonos or Buddhist, you know, temples. Like,
absolutely,
I think there's a great way to run with that idea. And I think given all the terms we're using here, it sounds appropriate. Like precise, indefatigable, sedulous, hollow. We're building up to this. Like, honestly, this is a list of just undead keywords.
It is. I've always been fascinated by the idea of humanity believing they can come back from the dead, because the whole concept of you can't take it with you is such a modern thing. And in the past, nobody really believed that. Like especially in Egypt, where it's like pharaohs were buried with all of their shit. Like, and by all of their shit, I mean all of their treasures. Even their pets and their servants and stuff like that, because all those things were there to help them ease better into the afterlife. And we are technically in an afterlife setting. So are these... Okay, I have a thought. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to come back to it. I do want to hear your final word.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So this word's kind of going to be a bit of a curveball with what we got here. Jagged. So, there's something very interesting to me about the imagery of stuff that's jagged. Like, one of the things I remember, this actually is tied more to a memory than it is tied to like a specific thing. So I'm perfectly fine using this as an adjective, as a like an implication for like a noun. But for me, jagged, my memory always goes back to when I was younger. There was this moment where I had stumbled across I think it was like stained glass, like a stained glass window or something in a shop. And it had actually, it was like sort of hanging there a little bit. Like it was in the backside of it. It wasn't for sale. It was one of those, like, clearly they were going to think about fixing it up. And like one of the shopkeepers like back there, And while I was watching, he's like, shit, this thing ain't gonna work. He just kind of stomps on it. And when he stomped on it, he actually broke the frame. And if you ever know, like, if you know how stained glass, at least in Europe, was made, like, you basically have the glass suspended in a simple metal frame or like a tar frame.
Yeah.
To sort of keep it in place. So when he did that, it actually broke the metal frame. And, you know, weirdly, it broke, like, almost perfectly. Like, there was no broken glass. It sort of crunched through, like, the metal and just sort of snapped. And it made this really cool shape. It almost looked like a dagger, like, on the one side. I remember looking at it and being like, that is the coolest looking knife in the world as a little kid. I never told Mom about it because I was just like, I didn't want to admit that I was snooping around at the back of, like, the antique shop. But, like, it was such a very cool moment of, like, seeing how something that's so intricate and beautiful, even when damaged, can be something incredible. And it also looked inherently dangerous. Like, there's something about, like, stained glass that it's almost like obsidian in the way that it looks. The texture, if you ever run your hands over, like, stained glass as it's being used, especially if it's like the broken stained glass that's put together into a larger sculpture, this is like that broken, shattered glass. So it's like this weird, multicolored, translucent obsidian knife. And so that always sort of stuck with me, this image of something very beautiful, but very dangerous. Something that's broken and made into something more dangerous after it's been broken.
You know, that's making me think of an entirely different facet of Japanese culture, kintsugi.
Yes.
Yeah, the act of just repairing things with gold and making them look even more beautiful than they did before, but there is still that jaggedness to them. It's I don't know, the idea of just embracing imperfections, which is kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's the opposite of what you would expect out of enlightenment. It's just the idea of embracing those perfections is what makes somebody who they are, and not only who they are, but also helps to push them to some sort of state of nirvana or just enlightenment by understanding that you are your imperfections and you are the one who chooses what to do with them. I always really liked that idea with kintsugi because it's just it's so beautiful and fascinating how they do it.
And honestly, it's freeing too. So much of philosophy is built around making yourself more perfect or chasing a more perfect version of yourself. Whereas the idea of kintsugi is very much you are who you need to be. Like, you can see the damage, see the things that you're not proud of, and you shouldn't view that as other or something to be, like, obliterated out of hand or polished away. Sometimes those scars actually, they can help define you in a very meaningful way. And yeah, no, I like that. I will admit, my mind sort of, like, debated bringing up kintsugi when I mentioned this story, but I was like, I don't know. I didn't want to reach. I'm glad you brought it in. I'm really glad because I was thinking about it too. I just never really, like, two together somewhere. So yeah, that's my image. Jagged. What about you? What's your final? What's your sixth? Or your what's the sixth? Your third?
My final word is also kind of a curveball. It doesn't really match up with any of the other words that we've pitched. Jagged's a curveball, but it's a good one. I'm not sure how I feel about this one, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Nostrum.
Nostrum. Okay. Actually heard this word recently, but in a totally different capacity.
A quack remedy or an untested cure.
Love that, yeah. A medicine, especially one that is not considered effective, prepared by an unqualified person. That's hilarious. Do you know where I heard this word recently?
Nostradamus?
No. I heard this in the context of the old World of Darkness games. There was an adversarial faction for a werewolf that worked for the evil bad guys, which are, like, literally the scions of entropy in that setting. So werewolves work for nature. These work for the guys that are rot and eventual entropy. And they had this massive supernatural corporation serving as a shell company for all their evil shit called Nostrum. I didn't know that's what the word meant until you just told me, and now that makes so much more sense as to why this company that releases like pollutants and is like actively creating abominations is called Nostrum.
I also
Hilarious.
I really like the idea that Nostrum can be viewed as not only like an antiquated form of medicine, but also it can be a very cynical, a cynic's view of, say, a panacea. Like they're like, well,
Mm-hmm.
it's not inherently scientific. It doesn't have any like real backing behind it. All these people say is that they just know it works. They don't know why it works, but it just does, hence the magic. So I
Yeah,
was wondering
yeah.
where that could come into play, if it even would.
I kind of like. I feel like what we're building towards here is a faction of like. So I had this idea while we were talking about these words. This is such a good word, Brett. Like it's a curveball, but it's such a good curveball. I really want to use this word.
Oh, thank you.
What if the idea we're running with here, because we're talking like keywords again, these keywords are all kind of undead. And like again, we're in a post-life setting. So what does undeath mean? What if we do the opposite of what normal undead do? Most undead are basically dead things walking. They're dead things traipsing among the living. What if these guys are sort of living things made dead? So, like an inversion of that trope. You mentioned the idea that, like, sometimes these like monks would believe that they could ascend immortality to higher planes. What if there's a faction in where, like, one of the worlds the setting draws its dead from that did it, that succeeded in what they were trying to do, but they just didn't know what they actually like were achieving. So like these guys make their undead, they literally cross over, and now they're kind of just. It's not like I can go back and tell everyone like, "Hey, congratulations, you did it." Like maybe we could refine the process or like do something. Like no, now they're just here. They didn't technically die, and so there are these things clinging to the edge of life. Um, Feel free to veto that because that does seriously skew one of our big premises of the setting, which is that everyone here is dead.
So,
But
well, I'm not going to veto it. I'm more so going to yes and, because I have written down some notes already about the idea of this group, or maybe maybe this isn't a group. Maybe these are individuals. We can come up with the idea of individuals that were able to take more than just their psychological selves through the veil. I I wrote down people that brought what they had in life to the afterlife. So that they found a way to sort of essentially open up some sort of, I don't want to say portal, but they found a way to sneak things, like smuggle things in, and it's a one-time thing. So yeah, like you said, I don't think they should be able to go back and report on it, but
oh yeah,
um because this also creates the interest of an entirely different faction, or a faction that we already have, wanting to seek out the people that have been able to do this, take their shit, and then like interrogate them, and then further figure out like, okay, well, do they still have a body that is able to be possessed in their living mortal realm? And I think there's some interesting japes to go on there.
oh yeah, for sure. This actually does open up a thing that like it's a thing that I love so much in tabletop role playing games or in like even tabletop war games, skirmish games, which is faction interplay, right? Like, what does this guy think of this guy? What's he gonna get out of doing what he's doing, etc.
Right.
And it's like the best part of World of Darkness is you get all the way to the back of each of the character classes, and there's this lovely like 6-part thing where it's like this is what they think about themselves, and here's what they think about everyone else. And it's always very entertaining to read. And so like this does tie this faction, at very least narratively, as an adversary, if not like a if not having a direct want connection to what the evocative might be able to do, like
Yeah.
with their ability to pull memories from other worlds. So like, yeah, I like that idea a lot actually, and I love the idea of like the one time we brought things through. That is very intriguing to me. I very much like that.
So that also begs the question, was there an event in which somebody brought over a lot of mortals,
Mm.
and did those mortals procreate and sort of create an entire population of living people in a land of death, thus creating sort of a weird it would also, hello Waffle, did you want a cameo?
Hello, Waffle.
Hey buddy,
Oh,
buddy boy. Um, so I think that would create like an interesting sort of premise for a war, because it's just like, wait, you guys aren't supposed to be here. You're still alive. You still have your time. And if you die here, what happens? You return to the previous mortal world that you were on as a spirit.
oh, I like that. So it's a two-way street here.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, the living die, return, and they come here to the hereafter in a what we would consider by hereafter standards moderately healthy state, like will be considered a normal state.
Mm-hmm.
But if you arrive here living and die, you go back the other way, and you go back in a distorted manner because your arrival was distorted. So it sort of undermines the laws of nature of these. What's the phrase that they use in Destiny all the time? There's a symmetry to these spaces, a cosmic shape to these spaces.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, actually. Maybe this is a chicken and egg scenario. What if this is what led to the creation of this cult in the first place? So maybe the cult wasn't even the ones who brought the living over. Maybe at some point in the past, some cataclysmic event, or perhaps, some ancient culture, what have you, no one's really sure. They're the ones that breached into the hereafter or established themselves in the hereafter. There was a war, they died. And then wherever this new faction came from, they encountered these wraiths, these ghosts. And they figured if they can come that way, like that, we can do the same in the other direction. And so that's how they figured out how to do this.
Interesting. No, I really like this concept a lot, and I want to keep exploring it because I feel like there's a lot of potential here. I think there should have been, like we've been saying, some sort of event in which an unprecedented amount of mortals were able to pass over into hereafter, and thus creating this the juxtaposition of a bunch of mortals are here, but if they die, well, also does that begs the question: do mortals age now, or are they heretofore immortal? So I think we could start tying in some words to this.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so we've got this. I'm just going to start a new subsection here. Okay, so we're going to say, call it the Plague of the Living for now.
Yeah.
For our event and for our subfaction. We call them living mummies for now. As a quick point placeholder. Okay, so we've got this major event where this happened. I feel like something like this has to be almost a mistake, right? Because in the hereafter, all the factions are kind of concerned with where they are now.
Right.
And even the ones that are interested in like things from other places, they usually are things from other places, like the Monastery of Leechers and the Evocative. They're interested in those other places precisely in how it can help them here. Like, they're not interested in going to these alien worlds. They're interested in learning from them. It's taking these memories. For them, it's about as interesting a site as, like, I would say, like, if I were to find tar sands. Like, if I were an oil tycoon, that'd be a very interesting site. If I was a hiker, I'd be like, that looks like the grossest place I would not want to walk.
Right.
And so these guys are oil tycoons looking at oil sands. They're not actually interested in going there. They're interested in tapping it. So as a result, I don't think there's any faction that would have a vested interest in wanting to bring mortals into the hereafter yet. We haven't made one. Except this living mummy faction, which I feel is like that's the end goal of this. Like, that's how we're going to get there.
Right.
So what if the first time this happened was a mistake? Like a super high order member of like a high order, like complex order or a primal simplicity like battle happened where like the godlike figures at the top of two factions fought or did something. One of these two factions did something and they kind of just broke reality for a little bit. And just people came in. That's my first thought, but please feel free to change it or spin it.
I actually want to attach a name to this figure that did it. I think accident is one thing. I think they do genuinely believe that this is a religious practice, and it's that's where we can tie in the word nostrum, because like it's an unpracticed thing. There isn't any real science behind it, but they genuinely believe in it because it was previously written in ancient scriptures. So I think some Lord Emperor sort of commanded all of his like loyal servants and all of his like loyal knights, samurai, warriors, whatever you want to call them. I think his name is Drayden Ma. I think Drayden Ma brought over all these people into this great tomb and basically just all had them commit a form of suicide. It was basically like a giant death cult, like drink the Kool-Aid and you'll join me in the afterlife. And he was right. I think that was I think that was what makes this so interesting, is that this cult is actually correct. They just don't realize. I think Drayden Ma even kind of had a feeling that it might be bullshit, but he was like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to be the one to do it. So he basically brought over hundreds, if not thousands of people with him and basically declared war on the afterlife and was like, I'm going to conquer death.
I love this. I love this idea.
It's like a reverse Lich, right? It's like the living conquering the peaceful dead. Like, so.
Yeah.
I think.
How do you spell this guy's name? I want to get
Draedon and then space Ma. Ma.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. I'm glad I didn't butcher it.
I mean, like, it's a made-up name.
Nailed it, but like, yes. Okay, there we go. All right, I like that. I really like this idea. This feels like natural evolution of where like the Chinese emperors with their massive like complexes of terracotta warriors, like that feels like the eventual, if that shit just kept going and there was a thread of like arcane divine truth to it, eventually there's gonna be some guy who's like, yes, and I will not only go there with my coterie, I'll conquer those bastards. I'm going to make an army and I'm gonna overthrow God. And that is pretty sure there's like several epics that are like that specific exact.
Oh, absolutely. And I wanted to explore that like old like Epic of Gilgamesh level of like power fantasy. Like, yeah, this and Drayden Ma, we don't have to know the fate of Drayden Ma. The thing is, we have to know the fate of the Draydenites, what became of his people. And yes, unfortunately, I guarantee they just populated the afterlife, and there's a bunch of mortals running around now. And it's sort of, I think that if people were to play in this setting, yeah, you could choose between playing a mortal and a denizen of hereafter. But I think there's just going to always be some sort of level of distrust for the mortals because they came here kind of like the orcs to Azeroth in World of Warcraft. They came there by the means of somebody who had very poor and evil intentions.
You really nailed that on the dot there. Actually, that comparison. I was thinking like I know there's this one I can't quite place my finger on that's what it is. It
Drayden Ma is
absolutely.
my Medivh. Like,
There you go. There you go. That makes
our
sense. That makes
Medivh
perfect
comrade.
sense. Yeah. Comrade. Yeah, no, I love this actually. Okay, so you have Drayton, so this ancient warlord Drayden Ma, who led an army of the living into hereafter by I'm going to say well, I'm trying to figure out like a way to describe. I guess ritual suicide is the exact word.
It basically was ritual suicide, yes.
Yes, via a form of ritual suicide. I feel like if we're talking about like the living and they arrived here via this means, like, yeah, led an army of the living in the hereafter via a form of ritual suicide on a quest to conquer, I guess, to conquer land of the dead.
Yeah, conquer death itself, so that like no more, none of his servants may ever perish again. They will not only he will be immortal, but everybody will become immortal.
This is literally if Alexander the Great just got really fucking bored.
Yeah.
He's like, I have nowhere else to conquer. What about death? Death it is!
Death will become Alexandria.
Can we bring elephants with us? I'm sure they could work. All right,
as long as they have a soul.
So, okay, so these guys led an army of the living in the hereafter via a form of ritual suicide and a quest to conquer death itself. This in antiquity, let's see, an ancient catastrophe. There we go. Let's make that clear. An ancient catastrophe caused by the warlord Drayden Ma, led an army of the dead, or an army of the living, into hereafter by a form of ritual suicide, the conquer death itself. I think we can safely say he failed. Like, we can at least say, like,
oh, he didn't
or at least
succeed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not to say he's not maybe still attempting.
I feel like he would be the perfect example of a high order faction, like a high order character, like complex order, where this dude like entered in, and he was like, yes, and we will conquer this place, bring order to it, bring it under my heel. And now this guy, at least in my mind, we don't need to answer it, but like in my mind, this guy's now like 80,000 types of like geometry floating around a sphere somewhere. But I really dig the idea of it. So this guy led this invasion. That's how humans got here. Or not humans, but like the living. The living propagated in the ages that followed, and now populate the hereafter. Okay. I feel like the end of this is, and the dead think that this is not a good thing. Like, as a rule of thumb. Like,
right.
What's that line from God, it's the, my word, I cannot remember the name of the damn thing. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. God created the universe. This was roundly viewed as a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much that same energy that are like, oh, those fucking living people.
This was widely viewed as a bad move.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. I need to read that again. It's been way too long. Oh my god. It's such a great line.
I also had this idea that maybe, I mean, you can't bring over this amount of people, like, and we'll call it Imperium numbers because we just add zeros wherever we feel like it's necessary. But
yeah.
I like the idea that a lot of them were like monks that were like, maybe they had failed in their previous attempts and they were like, well, our emperor is inviting us to reattempt and reprove ourselves. And maybe they did go to the afterlife. And I like the idea that that they maybe sort of broke off and made their own faction because maybe they didn't realize just exactly what Drayden Ma was doing by sort of like I think Drayden Ma is a trickster at heart. Like he didn't tell his people that yes, we are going to be conquering death. It's just like no, we will go to the land of death and find the answer to immortality. And it's just like okay, that sounds
like,
vague
and
enough.
the answer is kill all the things that are dead.
Kill everything that's dead. Drain them. Drink their memories. What happens when a mortal drinks the memories of the dead?
Oh god, that's horrifying. I feel like we're at the point now where we're discussing mortals in the hereafter and how they function. I feel like the answer to this is two different types of play. If you're playing as the dead in hereafter, you basically are playing a recurring character. Like, if your character dies, you basically just, like, you can return at some point in time, fast forward. Mortals don't. Mortals die, they go back as wraiths to wherever they came from, wherever they originated from. But as a trade-off, I feel like mortals hoard memory. Like, so, in a way, the living in the hereafter act kind of like in the same way that the undead act in most other fantasy, where the undead in fantasy are an inversion of natural life. They are not healthy. Wherever the undead rise, animals and plants die. Things don't do right. Things go wrong. And I feel like where the living are in the hereafter, they are the opposite of the way things are supposed to be, where memories are traded back and forth, people are drained, they rise again with time as memories coalesce into their empty souls. And now you have these folks that are mostly body, and they don't have that core part of them that can re-kernel from nothing. So they just kind of go.
Yes, and.
Yes, and. All right.
The more memories they absorb, the more eldritch they become. Since we have this idea of like, I mean, we see the High Order, they become eldritch, they become strange and weird, but guess what? They have symmetries, they have patterns, they make sense. Even in a non-Euclidean way, they make some sort of sense. What if mortals consuming too many memories and gaining powers of the afterlife basically become like Eldrazi? They just become incredibly destructive and distorting. Like they ruin things around them and they leave just absolute apocalypse in their wake. Like they are literally apocalypse mages. Like it's like they are harbingers of magically speaking, weirding, this unexplainable phenomenon. Like they warp the landscape so much that they may even create like new materials or new life.
I love that. This is the same energy as Frenzied Flame from Elden Ring. Like, you have this idea of like there is a natural order, and then there is this imposed order. And then there's this, and you just point at the guy whose head is a fireball, and everything he looks at burns. Like, this is a whole third faction we're talking here. So we have primal simplicity, complex order, and now we have this distortion, this perversion of things. My mind immediately goes like the perverse living, like, or something like that. But I'm trying to think of a good way to describe it. I'm just gonna make their own thing where they just don't create order. They're chased, like the order and chaos thing are a whole different thing than these guys. These guys, wherever they go, they literally erode the foundations of hereafter. And especially as they get more powerful. I love the idea of them becoming eldritch and just wrong. So
I mean, I'd imagine it be referred to as the curse of the living.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Or mortal's blight.
Yeah, right now I have it as the Plague of the Living, but
Oh, I
like,
like Plague of the Living.
yeah, I like the idea of I like the idea of Mortal Plague. That's an interesting
The
idea.
Mortal Plague, yeah, because I just like the idea that this afterlife, yeah, it has some problems and like obviously there's conflicts and stuff like that because anything with sapience is there's going to be conflict. Um, but there wasn't any like real major like world shaking or life changing, unlife changing conflicts until the mortals came and they just started
Yeah,
ruining everything. A good commentary on humanity too, if we wanted to look at it that way. Like it's just like yeah, they just fuck everything up that they mess with.
I have a name for this third force:
Pollution,
Shattering Chaos.
shattering chaos is cool.
That's our third force. So far, I have Complex Order is gold. Primal Simplicity is like a soft earthen green. Shattering Chaos, I'm thinking we're going like fuchsia on this shit. Like, my mind always goes with there's this old art trope in Disney, evil. Every villain is, and then the color. Every villain is lemons, every villain is lime, every villain is lilac. So every villain is either yellow, green, or purple. Hilariously, we've already got yellow and green spoken for here. So that leaves us with purple.
What if okay, but hear me out. What if we don't depict them as evil? What if they
Yeah.
look like holy avenging angels and stuff like that? Like
Mhm.
they are the be not afraid of our setting, but all they do is
Yeah.
like corrupt and twist everything around them because mortals have this power. Uh, I like this idea of perception is reality, and I like the idea that their perception is indefatigable, right? So like whatever
Mhm.
they see, they will never not be able to comprehend it in the afterlife because the afterlife is made for those that have already passed and to have all this life experience and wisdom and et cetera, et cetera. They're made of an entirely different thing. They're made of memories. They're not made of meat. So when you
Mhm.
have this meat suit showing up and their perception, just by looking at something, they can corrupt it because their perception is how
Oh.
the living's perception is how the afterlife was shaped in the first place. So what happens when a living person comes to the afterlife? Hereafter looks the way it does because of the common perceptions of mortals' afterlives while they were alive. So when you have a living creature coming in there and being like, I'm going to perceive it as how I see, they can create literal hellscapes because they're like, I was evil in life and I'm just going to continue being evil. So they literally just open up maws of super volcanoes and just giant fucking destructive forces just by a sort of like willing it into existence. Obviously, this takes some sort of willpower to keep things from being just stupid,
Right. Right.
but like
This is their
willpower,
power track we're talking
yes.
about here.
And they use
Um,
memories to do this. They use some sort of like font of memories of like slaughtering of like taking these pools of that like these pools that create or bring the dead between the veil. They literally just swallow up these pools and create whatever the fuck they want. It's basically their mana. They are the most greedy wizards to ever exist.
this is very much like God. I remember I was listening to this. I believe he was a physicist, astrophysicist,
Hmm.
and he was describing the early universe. And the way he described it is the conditions that led to our existence are lethal to us. And this is like the same thing. This is like what would it be like if like the Big Bang happened again? Well, we'd all die, basically. The universe would probably be great, but we wouldn't. And this is kind of the same thing. These guys are that seed kernel gone ape shit within the world. I love this idea. So okay, so I have complex order seeks to indoctrinate souls into their order. Primal simplicity seeks to win over souls to a road order.
Hmm.
Shattering chaos or mortals whose ambition warps hereafter. So I feel like in regards to what they want for souls, I feel they want to consume souls. Like here, in this case, they want to literally drain them.
Yeah, because
So
they're
one
nothing.
side wants to indoctrinate, the other wants to win them towards their cause, and this third one basically just views them as a juice box.
Yeah, that sums up humanity in a nutshell, I think. There's people that
Pretty,
just genuinely don't care. There's people that care a little bit, and there's people that care about everything and every living thing around them, be they even alive or dead. I have a
that
funny
tracks.
idea to like put Nostrum into here.
Mm-hmm.
So for the architects and stuff like that, and the people, how are we referring to the people that live on the base level? Unliving on the base level. What I'm trying to remember the term we used for them.
I think we refer to them as the vessels.
It's the vessels.
Yeah, like vessels is the term for like an undead person, since their
I,
memories are separate than them.
I like the idea that a nostrum
Mm.
for the living blight is to just kill them. Like,
Yeah,
it's an untested cure, but it seems to stop them, right? And
yeah.
they view the living as a disease. They are literally
Mm.
a plague. They have come here to be conquistadors, therefore they need to be removed. This is not
Yep.
where they belong. They are in a place where they inherently do not belong. I just love the idea of these Eldrazi level destructive beings literally just looking like people. Because, like, why wouldn't they? They are the
Yeah.
only thing that looks normal around them, and their perception of themselves in the afterlife might even warp them into being taller or stronger or more attractive, or maybe even in the opposite direction. Maybe people like hate themselves. Maybe they view themselves as big, disgusting monsters and like, like with giant arms and legs and like fangs and stuff like that. Like they warp their perceptions not to the meta rules of hereafter, but to their own ends. Like that's what makes them so terrifying. Is they can essentially make themselves an 100-armed giant, like fucking Greek mythology, like if they wanted to. Like
Right. Yeah.
these guys are the monsters. They are what threatens the world. And instead of leaning away and saying that Drayden Ma came a long time ago, so like his threat isn't really lingering, I think what's better is that nobody really knows what happened to Drayden Ma. He kind of fizzled out, but that did not stop all of his disciples from existing, and they are currently at conflict, and they're in massive conflict.
I love that. I love that so much. Memory from vessels. Or personal power. There we go. I love this idea. So we're not sure what happened to Drayden Ma, and in fact, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all.
Theoretically, the hereafter is infinite. So
Infinitely
like,
huge, yeah. So it's
yeah. So he might be elsewhere, kicking ass. His campaign, his crusade might still exist. He might be back on the mortal plane as a wraith at this point. He might at this point just be like an actual high level like primal simplicity or a complex order lord, but I doubt it because the way his behavior speaks is he's probably he is shattering chaos. So if he is going to still be around and at that high level of incandescence, he would have his like the shattering chaos version of incandescence. So but whatever, he's off doing his thing. What matters is here his legacy is causing all sorts of fucking havoc. So I love that. Basically, we've taken the inverse. This is what happens when. Is this how the demons felt when the Eldar started building the webway and they were like, "Why the fuck are you here? Please leave."
Literally like
This is my home. Why are you making it neat and orderly? There's like a beautiful screaming, howling person sitting right there where you built that chair. Fuck you. Like, I love the idea of this, of just like, this is, by our standards, if we were in this setting and we were like, you could either go back as a wraith and be this damaged, tainted thing, or here and cause havoc and live and become unbelievably powerful. Yeah, there's a large portion of folks that would take the second deal without
me
any
too.
thought.
My biggest question is, we sort of talked about how the vessels do eat to some extent. They have like maybe they don't need to, but they do, you know. So the living mortals here, does time fluctuate differently? Do they not age? Do they need to eat? Do they need to actually take care of themselves? Because that would be their biggest weakness, is cutting them off from their resources.
I feel like they do, but it's different. Maybe for them, that's what keeps them from like. So maybe that's what keeps them anchored here.
Mm.
Like you and I have to eat to persist as living creatures.
Yeah.
And it's a breakdown of systems. These creatures live in a place where entropy doesn't really it doesn't really exist, right? Like primal simplicity isn't seeking to destroy anything, it's seeking to in effect like rebirth it. Whereas complex order wants to make perfect and endless, like the current state of being. So
Right.
neither of these things are really entropy. At worst, it's a circle, and the other is a line. So it's a spiral, upwards forever. These guys, on the other hand, bring entropy with them. And entropy is constantly trying to claim them. So they need to stave it off. And that's what eating, drinking, all that. And I feel like the action of it is what's important. Not necessarily what they eat, but that they eat. And so, like, for them, it's a ritual in the same way like elves in most fantasy don't need to sleep, but they meditate, right? Like, it's the ritual of it that has that power. And maybe they aren't aware of it.
The fonts of hereafter, where vessels are birthed, is that, I think that's like, not only is it incredibly powerful magic, quote unquote, for the mortals, but maybe it also sustains them in a way that makes them nearly immortal. So it's sort of like they're always seeking out the fountain of youth, and the fountain of youth is everywhere. So like they can kind of just get what they want, and maybe there's even specific mortals that literally just buy and sell this shit to other mortals, and which, if you think about it, kind of makes them vampires. They suck the lifeblood from things and just use
We're
it to their
very
own
much
means.
dealing with weird vampires here.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I imagine a lot of our mortals, not like humans that look like you and I. I'd imagine they're more like proto-humans, or they don't even have to be humans. They could be any sort of mortals, and we can talk about that at a later date. But I like the idea of these proto-humans that are like 200 pounds, but they have like 6% body fat. Like they are literal monsters. Like and there's a lot of evidence from early humanity, like 30,000 years ago, in Europe and across the world and stuff like that, where humans were literally just giant muscle creatures. Like they didn't have like a distribution of body fat like we do. Like they were just lean killing machines. So I like the idea of these, maybe leaning more towards like a middle-aged sort of level of technology, perhaps, but like and it also depends where they came from, to be fair. But I like the idea that let me see here. Let me look back to my notes so I actually sound like I know what I'm talking about. Drayden Ma, for example, like his people seem like they would almost be just like a clan. Like they'd just be a large clan. Like they wouldn't be like a Roman Empire type thing. I'd imagine them being something more resemblant of like a tribe in Africa, or a group of people in like the Celts in Europe, the like a large swath of people from like the Southeast Asian Pacific area. Like they are just really hardy and tough people with a lack of modern technology.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that is so. Okay, this is an interesting thing. There's a parallel case on an existing franchise, or an existing, like, not franchise, but an existing intellectual property that holds pretty good water for this. So I haven't talked to you very much about one-page rules. I'm not going to get into the huge spiel of it. But in their fantasy setting, they have this very interesting faction they call Shadow Stalkers. Their whole thing is they existed in another plane of existence, in a parallel world. Because mortals are dumb, and they basically did their own oops, all demons thing. When they do it, they kind of weakened that space between. And now occasionally Shadow Stalkers just fall into our world. And they don't like being here. For the record, they actually don't see, and light is caustic to them. So, like, they have to bail back and forth constantly. They're trying to always get home, and they're always very pissed about mortals who occasionally try to follow them after. So this weird inverse of, like, something from another place that is alien, they're not evil, they're just defiantly not natural in a lot of ways. And this very much feels like that same sort of thing. But in this case, where Shadow Stalkers kind of go, well, I'm here, I gotta survive till I can get back. These guys are, well, I'm here, might as well plunder reality for all it's fucking worth.
When in Rome, like...
Right, yeah, exactly.
Vita Vici or whatever the fuck it is.
But they had very similar levels of technology, like that you're describing. So like Iron Age, Bronze Age level tech. And I think that's a good idea of like sticking to that level of technology.
Maybe Drayden Mock sort of weakened that veil between these places. I don't imagine that Hereafter is like an overlaid plane like that you can reach easily. I think this was a long and arduous process, but specifically for wherever Drayden Ma was from, he did sort of find a way to like interweave the places. So now there is like a thinner veil, so people end up walking into this place and they can't leave unless they just die and become a wraith. They're just trapped. It's an internal imprisonment. It's like getting exiled in Magic the Gathering. You're not going to see that bitch ever again. Like, not coming back.
Yeah. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah,
I feel like that's why they're so desperate, because they know what happens to wraiths from where they're from.
Yep.
Like, they're like, oh yeah, oh shit. We can't tell them that's us. Like, we die here, we go back. They exorcise us or obliterate us or use whatever juju they got to cast us out. And then that's it. We're gone. We're dead. We're hyper dead. We're exiled. We're gone. And so, oh God. So these guys are funneling themselves into an alternate reality. Or
by the fault of their former emperor.
Right. Who arrived here by discovering this alternate reality because of the existence of wraiths. And so now, these wraiths are basically every mortal that dies in the Hereafter. And there's probably more than ever. So there's probably more Drayden Maws out there doing the same thing because they're figuring it out themselves.
And we have a whole other world that we could build for a whole other setting that is literally just infested by wraiths because of the actions of the now gone dead emperor as they perceive it. And
so for them, they really do think they're fighting, they're fighting this invasion on their end. Because it's them invading their own plane after they die twice.
Like you said earlier, everything, every realm, every place has symmetries.
Yep.
They have their own invasion to deal with.
Cannot be denied. I love that.
I really like
I love that so much.
So
mortals are trapped here.
Man, this would be such a good plot for a book. Holy shit.
Right? Absolutely. I really like this feels like it could be a good book. This feels like there could be a really good skirmish game in this. I'm 100% on board with this. This is really cool. Oh man. Oh no, I shouldn't. I feel like I need to start making one-page rules army books for these guys. I love what we got here.
Me too.
So
I like the idea that the Wraiths, just a real quick note, I like the idea that the Wraiths are attempting to communicate and say, we are trapped, but they just can't understand. They just sound like screaming, wailing agony. And in the, like the part of them, I'd imagine their souls are sort of fractured because part of them is still in the afterlife, but the majority of them is just a shade. So I'd imagine they sort of just end up as babbling husks that can no longer be replenished in Hereafter.
I've got it.
Yeah.
Okay. When mortals die and they enter the Hereafter, their bodies, basically, they leave behind their bodies. But their soul, the kernel of what makes them them, goes with their memories to the hereafter. In the hereafter, their memories naturally leave them, literally just migrate them. They come here as a vessel. And so then they begin to slowly fill. When a mortal dies in the hereafter, they leave behind an empty vessel. And their spirit goes back to the mortal plane. And it is memory, but it's memory without that hardened kernel of the vessel that binds the soul together. So it's literally just a swirling vortex of memory that barely is almost non-mortal.
It's a writhing,
it's non-sapient,
aberrant force. They're aberrations.
I love that. Yeah, they are. They absolutely are. So wraiths, where they might be trying to warn them, but like it's almost like we talk about like the idea in our world of brain death, like when a person's body is basically just them sans everything that makes them self-aware. This is body death. This is everything besides the part of you that binds your cognition together. This is pure cognizance, unbound by the tempering elements of biology. There's no way we would understand that. That's basically just electricity, right? That's just energy.
Yeah.
Howling, screaming, memory energy. That's, oh God, what a horrible way to die twice. Again, these guys to enter the plane have already kind of killed themselves. So
yeah, because they've doomed themselves. Like they're like, oh, we're gonna become immortal, but it's like, hey, guess what? You're technically already dead. Like, because you're not getting out of this, and that could be an interesting premise for the book of just like, oh, these, we could tell the story of Drayden Ma and one of his disciples being like, oh, so we are just dead. Like we're not going back. And just kind of like privately confiding in Drayden Ma, and Drayden Ma's like, I'll find a way. I will. I can live forever. I'll find a way. It doesn't matter how long it takes. We will live forever. And his disciples like, no, I don't. I know this underworld is just vast and large and goes on forever. But guess what? Our answer could keep going on forever, perpetually away from us by that logic. So who's to say that you just didn't kill your entire empire and leave a bunch of paupers and like ne'er-do-wells to fend against people that end up dying here?
Yeah.
So this is a really roundabout way of saying that this guy not only created an apocalyptic event in the afterlife, but also in the world that he came from. He did a double apocalypse.
He screwed his world so thoroughly.
A bipocalypse, if you will. Wait, maybe I shouldn't use that word. A bi-apocalypse.
Usually pay double action for that, Cotton.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So good. I love that. I love this so much. This is such a cool premise. Okay. So far, it feels like we've just sort of gone all in on this third faction, and I'm down with it. I'm 100% here. So
they're the most interesting, to be fair.
Oh yeah, for sure. Complex order, primal simplicity, shattering chaos. So I've got, for their commodities memory, shattering chaos are mortals whose ambition warps hereafter as they're hoarding memory for personal power. The term they use for their incandescence would be ascension. So we have abstraction, cultivation, ascension.
I like it. I like the idea of humanity that's sort of just embraced the idea of just like maybe having like tumultuous breakdowns of like, oh, I'm never going back. But then sort of being like, you know what? I'm here. I'm among these people. And guess what? I can learn so much from these people and live essentially forever anyway. And just have nothing but knowledge, and I can maybe sort of mend the bridge between the living and the dead, and maybe I could find my ancestors. Like there's so many plot hooks to people that have sort of accidentally traipsed into hereafter that I think it just sort of writes itself.
It does. It really does.
I could write, I feel like if I sat down and started right now, by the end of the year, I would have a novel in this setting, the length of The Stand. Like it would just be it would be 1,400 pages of just stories from people accidentally traipsing. Like,
Yeah, honestly, that it does have that potential of just being. I love what we got here. This is actually a really solid kernel for a setting. This really is. Every time we sit down, I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna top the last time. This is pretty freaking good, man. I'm digging the hell out of it.
to think I sat down with like not a single, neither one of us sat down with any ideas of how this would turn out. It just did.
Nope.
Yeah,
Empty as can be. Oh man. Okay. I'm really digging that. So, and as far as their cosmology goes, like I have the premise like post like monolithic city spires, incandescent, artificial, non-Euclidean complexity reaching from serene, natural, green, primal simplicity, which creeps upwards from howling, perverse, ravenous, shattering chaos, which invades from beyond. I kind of love this.
I have the perfect opening sentence to this entire novel, right?
Mm-hmm.
As he ended our world, he would unknowingly damn another.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
That is like the man in black ran across the desert and the gunslinger followed. Like that is like like punchy. That's like immediately gets you interested. Like, what the fuck happened? Like something horrible happened. What? So yeah, but I like how we have. I always like taking the juxtaposition of like this peaceful, serene afterlife and putting a conflict in there, because that's not to say the conflict doesn't reach to all edges of the known place. It's just the conflict is so sour that it cannot be not acknowledged. It's a cancer. And but that doesn't mean it's like Ghibli movies. There's always like a small cancer in this beautiful, like almost perfect society that they create, and they fix it somehow, some way. But that's just it. This can't be fixed. It can be remedied with, say, a nostrum. And I wonder, I think we're at a good stopping point, but I wanted to put some food for thought.
Yeah.
What if a nostrum for the living was finding a way to kill themselves so they can actually just become souls here anyway, and actually live out an afterlife, and they find a way to keep wraiths from entering their mortal world? But what would that mean exactly? And like that could be an entire plot in its own right, a mortal who is attempting to actually join the vessels.
I love that. I love that very much. And I definitely feel we need to touch on that for sure next time. Red, homie. I think we initially were like, let's start with like, some living mummies, and like, no, we just fucking sprinted past that and like, what if we made extraplanar invaders out of mortals?
That's the beautiful thing about this show, is that you never fucking know what's gonna happen by the end of it, because like I have all these notes written down and a bunch of Japanese words and Drayden Ma, I guess. I think this is it for me, though. I think this is my muse. I think this is what I want to write a book about, like genuinely. Like I've been trying to find for a while a story that would be worth writing. This is it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is good, man. What's the phrase? You aim for the moon, and if you miss, at least you go howling, screaming, incandescent into the stars. Like that's basically what we're doing here. So I love it so much.
I played Mario Galaxy. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, Chief, you want to do the honors? Wrap up the end of the session?
Sure. Just real quick outro. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Because we do this, we're going to get back to doing it every week, or at least every other week. We'll figure it out. I'll let you know. But thank you for joining us. This is literally just a collaborative writing show where it's basically a podcast. We just sit down, chit chat, come up with stuff, and eventually mold out entire settings, entire phenomenon, etc. I've been Red, one of the three primary colors. You can find all of our links below. Please check out Omni's links. Omni has been nothing but a real one throughout the process of like sort of getting back on my feet when it comes to the creative process. So please check out his stuff. He makes an amazing comic. comics, plural. The guy's a fucking
I,
monster.
I'm
He's
dropping
a
a
beast.
comic a week now. A comic
He's
a week.
indefatigable. Okay.
I'm clinically insane.
Yes. but he is an absolute beast. Please check him out. Please follow us on Blue Sky on our accounts. At least the Writer's Block account, so you can keep up with updates, see when we're about to go live. I plan to be more active here in the future, so I'll be interacting, posting things, and just kind of chit-chatting with people more often. So, yeah.
Take care, folks. Like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next time, writers. Keep writing.